Samsara Dava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karanya Ganaganatvam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditya Madhya Manasora Sena Romancha Kampa Shitaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Vigrahara Jananitya Nana Shingaratan Mandira Marjanado Yukta Sabhaktam Shaniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasada Swadhana Tirtan Hari Bhakta Sangha Kritaiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Radhika Madhavayara Para Madhurya Lila Guna Rupa Namnam Pratikshana Svadanalaupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Nikunjayuna Yatikeli Siddhai Yaya Libhi Yuktira Pikshaniya Tatrati Daksha Rati Valabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Sakshadarit Vina Samasta Shastir Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadvi Kintu Prabhurya Prayeva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi Jayam Stuvam Sasya Yashasti Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Today they offer the peacock fan also, so you can wait for that.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasya Dishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhurada Nila Madhurade. Jaya Radha Nila Madhurada Nila Madhurade. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Goranita Jaya Goranita Jaya Goranita Jaya Goranita. Nita Gora Haribo 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 Nita Gora Haribo.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Nama Acharya Srila Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai, Premi Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Dada Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samavrita Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanande. All glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glory to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रह्लादलाददायिने हिरण्यकाशीपूर्वसः शीलाटङ्कानखालाये तो नरसिंहा पर तो नरसिंहा यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहा नरसिंहा हृदय नरसिंहा नरसिंहा हृदय नरसिंहा नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलवरे नाकमद्भुतसिंहा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपुर कनुबिंगा केशवधीरता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधीरता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा जयो भक्त प्रह्लाद भक्त प्रह्लाद भक्त प्रह्लाद जयो भक्त प्रह्लाद जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद जयो जयो गुरुदेव 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 जयो जयो गुरुदेव लक्ष्मी नरसिम्हा भगवान की जय प्रहलाद महाराज की जय
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसच विष्णु भक्तिपदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण प्रिय सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी ये तुम्हारा शरालो तारा वंशा पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी मोरा ये बिलास विलास कुंजे दियो वास नाया नाहेरी बो सादा युगल रूपरासी यही निवेदनादारा सकीरानु गाथा कोरो सेवाधिकार दिए कुरो निज दासी बिना कृष्ण दासे कोई यही ये नाम मोरा हो श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नबासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नबासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः यानि कानि च पाप्यानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि यानि कानि च पाप्नानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पाप्नानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी. जय वृंदा देवी, जय वृंदा देवी, जय वृंदा देवी, जय वृंदा देवी. निताय गौर हरि बोल, हरि बोल, हरि बोल, निताय गौर हरि बोल. वृंदाय तुलसी देव्याय प्रिययै केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः. विंध्याय तुलसी देव्याय प्रिययै केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः. विंध्याय तुलसी देव्याय प्रिययै केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः. जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय.
resident of Vrindavana. My desire also grant me residence in the precious groves of Sri Vrindavana town. Thus, within my vision, I shall always behold the beautiful paths of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower or carho dancer virgin. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love, Shri Radha and Govinda, Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for the propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods of Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Veda literature or to pursue the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activity and strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one's auspicious ritualistic activities, offering the Veda the fruity activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of the holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in your understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as thy trees who can fulfill to everyone, and they are full of compassion to fallen conditioned souls. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Pavamahadavakni Nirvapanam Shriya Gairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamida Sadhanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakali Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Eta Tishi Tava Kripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudevami Disham Yaha Janina Nurakaha Trinatapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manatena Kirtanya Sadaharihi Na Thanam Na Janam Na Sundarin Kavitam Va Jagadishakamaye Mama Jammani Jammanishvare Pavata Bhaktira Haituki Toi Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Pavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Bhata Pankaja Sthita Duri Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Karada Shrutaraya Vadanam Katkata Rudaya Gira Pulaka Nichitam Vapurkada Tava Nama Krahane Bhavishati Yuga itam nimishena chakshusha pravisha itam shunya itam jagat sarvam govinda virahe name ashrishava padaratam pinnastumam adarshanam marmhatam karotuva yatha tatha va vitatatu lampato mad prananatastu se eva na paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, or repeated births and deaths. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays and benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone grant all benediction to human beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules to chant in these names. O my Lord, all the kindness enables us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them.
One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street.
We
One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O mighty Lord,
I have no desire to accumulate wealth,
nor do I desire beautiful women,
and now
nor do I
any
any
number of
number
followers.
of
I only
followers. I only want causeless
devotional
devotional service, birth
birth
after
after
birth.
birth.
O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I fall into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name. When my voice choke up and when the hairs of my body stand on end, recitation of your holy name. O Govinda, feeling your separation and considering the moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurvimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Chitahapachakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parichina Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Dishatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Mutaye Tinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kisharaya Saksha Vairagya Mutaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Bhojayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumistvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Savamama Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratise Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopipa Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Masarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyadindaranya Kapajamadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastato Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestalibi Sevamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Mamsiva Tatatastita Karsan Venus Manir Gopir Gopinata Shriyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Stute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Dada Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai. Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakara Karanam Chinta Mani Prakara Sadmasukalpa Vriksha Lakshaviti Susuravira Vipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamana Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Venam Kwanandam Aravinda Dalayataksam Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sarvanamadya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayake Kalavilasam Shamam Tribangala Lita Nita Prakasham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Viddimanti Pasyanti Pantika Yanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadyam Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Yovanam Vedesi Durlabam Durlabam Atmabhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Manikungamana Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Yavichintitatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagaranda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagaranda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramana Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyamanuchasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistavanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmayara Sapati Bhavitavi Tavirya Eva Nityarupataya Kalavi Goloka Eva Nivasakilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hilesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Chintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukala Nyamenatistam Nanavataram Kurud Vinesukintu Krishna Swayam Sambhavat Paramam Pumam Yogo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Okay, Krishna. Go ahead.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin. And he is the prime cause of all causes. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers beautified with moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Samashundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, he is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe. at one and at the same time. Such is the primal Lord whom I adore. I adore the Swam Govinda, the primal Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primal Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities in the company of her confidants, Sakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portions.
Very good. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today, I want to go over one more time what we discussed yesterday, giving a little bit more detail. And what is it that we discussed yesterday? Well, a lady called me up, and she was very concerned about her son. Her son is going to a Christian school, and the Christian school taught her son about Vedic philosophy. And when she read the description of what they taught, she got confused because she didn't exactly understand what the English was saying and what they were trying to say. So, out of the blue, she calls me up and she says, I'm a little bit worried because my son is going to a Christian school, and the Christians taught him about Vedic Dharma, but I'm not sure exactly what they said, but I have a feeling that they said something that I don't agree with or is different than what the Vedas are actually about. So she asked me if I send you the text of what they explained that was taught, if I could explain to her what it meant. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So she sends me this text that she got from the Christian school about what they were teaching. Now, her, let's say, gut feeling that they were teaching something that was not bona fide and was meant to mislead her son, she was right. She couldn't explain it, but she felt in her heart that there was something wrong with it. So, let me read you. Let's see. Okay. Let me read you what she said. So they basically said that the Vedic tradition separates people into different classes. And by doing that, they limit or annihilate human worth and identity. Now, that's pretty strong words, and I'm going to explain how they do that. Well, first of all, the human identity is how you think you are and how you perceive yourself. And so human worth is related to that, and it has to do with the sense of self-worth and how you define yourself. So human worth is the sense of self-worth, whether you deserve to be respected, whether you're a good person or a bad person, how you see yourself. And then how you define yourself. Okay, so the Christians, they wrote that the Vedas reject any notion of universal human ethics and universal human value. Now, how did they get that point? The rejection of universal human ethics. Human ethics are the non-aggression principle. Means that if you are trained in human ethics, you'll not commit murder, you'll not commit rape, you'll not commit theft, you'll not do any of those sinful things. And then universal human value means that you're not condemned by some kind of, let's say, by birth to being, let's say, limited to a certain destiny that you can't change. Now, how are they coming to these conclusions? How are the Christians coming to these conclusions? Well, they studied the Mayavad philosophy and also the false caste system. Now, there is a false caste system that's being practiced today. It's been done. It started in Kali Yuga, where Brahmanas who wanted their children to immediately benefit from their, let's say, privileges, they changed one word of the Shastra. So in the 4th chapter, 13th verse, Chaturanyam Mayasristam Guna Karma Vibhagasaha, in the beginning of time, Krishna says, I established the 4 social orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, based on quality and work, guna and karma. So the Brahmanas, who had the exclusivity of Sanskrit knowledge, they purposely changed one word. They changed the word guna to janma. And they said, Chaturanya Maya Sistam, janma karma vibhagasa. And they made this false, unalterable designation that your position in society depends on your birth, and you can't change it. Now, I experienced that myself because, I'm not born in a Hindu family. So one time I was invited to do a ceremony in the home of a Nepali man in Seattle area. And I went and I did a whole ceremony, chanting mantras and so forth, and fire sacrifice and everything. And afterwards, one man came up to me and said, you did pretty good. I said, well, thank you very much. He said, but you're not actually bona fide. I said, really? He said, yes, you're not born a Hindu, so you can't really do these things correctly. I said, really? I said, that's not what my guru told me. He said, then your guru told you incorrectly. So I didn't want to get in an argument with them, I said, okay, well, thank you very much. I just walked away from it. So this is what the Christians are talking about, that the Vedas divide people into different classes, And those classes are determined by birth, not qualification, not education, by birth. And there's no way you can change it in this lifetime. You have to wait. In fact, there are people that openly say this, brahmanas. Of course, they're bogus brahmanas in India. They say that the Goras, or the white people, they can't really take the Vedic Dharma. They have to wait till they're born into a Hindu family in the next life. Have you ever heard that? Huh? You have, sir? Yeah. Anybody else ever hear that? Huh? Did you ever hear that? The Goras, that's guys like me, right? Whites, the whiteys. They have to wait to take birth in a Hindu family in order to become Vedic Brahmanas or whatever. This is exactly what the Christians are talking about. And they picked this up because it's there in the modern Hinduism. So that's why they say that human worth and identity are rejected by the Vedas, and any notion of universal human ethics or universal human value are rejected. And both human value and ethical mandates are relative to one's place in the order of being. In other words, what class you're in. Are you a Brahmana, Vaishya, Sudra, or Vaishya or Sudra? So it's fixed by birth. There's no way you can change it according to the false Brahminical interpretation due to changing one word in the Shastra. Now, when I explained this to the lady, like, she was really shocked. She said, "Oh, now I understand." She said, "The feeling I had is right. They actually are violating my child, right, by teaching him something that's not true." I said, "That's a fact, but they're referring to the false brahmanas who changed that one word, and to the Mayavadis who claim that there's no individuality. There's only one individuality, that's Brahman, which is impersonal. And the individuality of different people we see in the world today is zero. That's Mayavad philosophy. They reject the existence of the jivas. They reject the existence of the spiritual world, the material world. They say it's complete illusion, and that one must reject it. That is Mayavad philosophy. And on top of that, they reject also the spiritual world and all the eternally liberated souls in the spiritual world, including Krishna. And they say there's only one thing, that's the Brahman, which is impersonal. And when you merge into it, you no longer have any individuality. And that individuality is an illusion. Well, this is exactly what the Christians are pointing to. They're saying that the Vedic tradition rejects any notion of universal human ethics or universal human value. Both human value and ethical mandates are relative to one's place in the order of being. So it's relative to the varna you're in, and those varnas cannot be changed. Okay, so now that I explained to her what the Christians were saying, then I had to explain to her how it's a false narrative. It's not true. And I explained Chaturvanya Maya System, right, 4th chapter, 13th verse. And then I explained the 9th chapter, 32nd verse. Now I read this. I'm going to read it again. And I'm going to read other alternate translations of this verse by Srila Prabhupada, so we have a clear understanding what is the real Vedic Dharma. And in the meantime, I also explained to her the history of the Jabal Upanishad and Jabal, a boy who asked Gautam Muni to accept him as a disciple, and then he asked him, the guru asked him, "Can you tell me what your gotra is?" So he goes home and asks his mother, and his mother tears up and says, "Well, I can't really tell you who your father is. I was not leading a good life at that time, and therefore you don't have any gotra." So he goes back, and he knows that he's going to be rejected, and he says, "Sir, my mother says I don't know my gotra. She doesn't know who the father is." And Gautam Muni said, "Okay, then I accept you as my disciple." And he said, "What? You accept me as your disciple?" I said, "Yes, because you told the truth. That means you're a Brahmana." He said, "That's the real Vedic tradition. It's not based on birth. It's based on qualities and work." So, and the Jabal Upanishad is an ancient scripture of the Vedas. It's one of the Upanishads. Okay, so here it says, "Mam hi partavipasya yapisyu papayunha striya vaishas tata sudras tepiyanti parangatim." O son of Prita, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, vaishyas or merchants, and sudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. So one time, there was this one lady was a long time ago coming to the temple and listening to classes I was giving. And when she heard this, she was a Mormon, by the way, and when she heard this, she said, "Ah!" And she just like screamed. I said, "What's the matter? Is everything okay?" She said, "No, what your scripture just said. It's so misogynistic. In other words, it's so anti-woman, right?" I said, "No, you have to hear the purport also to understand what it means." Now, this is something I discuss at length in the book I wrote about this verse, because there are alternate translations to this verse. But already, if you read the purport, you get the real understanding of what's being said. Prabhupada is not referring to all women as one class. He's referring to a certain class of women. Although he doesn't use that in this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, but in other places where he translates the same verse, he gives completely alternative, he gives more information of what it means by women. It does not mean all women. It's a particular class of women. So if you read my book, you'll see all the evidence I give. But right now, we're going to hear the purport. It is clear. So I told her, I said, "Listen, hold your judgment. Listen to the purport, which is going to explain what this verse means." And this is the problem. If you only hear verses, like there's one devotee I know, he only recites verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Well, if you only hear the verses, it's very easy that you could be misled. You have to hear the purport also. Why did Prabhupada write a purport? But to give a further explanation of what is the meaning of the verse, right? So here it says, "It is clearly declared here by the Supreme Lord that in devotional service there is no distinction between the lower and higher classes of people. In the material conception of life, there are such divisions, but for a person engaged in transcendental devotional service to the Lord, there are not. Everyone is eligible for the supreme destination." There it is right there, everyone. It's not that women as a whole class cannot become Krishna conscious because they're considered less intelligent. No. It's not referring to all women. It's referring to a particular class of women. And then he makes it clearer. He says, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.18, it is stated that even the lowest, who are called chandalas, dog eaters, can be purified by association with a pure devotee. Therefore, devotional service and the guidance of a pure devotee are so strong that there is no discrimination between the lower and higher classes of men and women. Anyone can take to it. The most simple man, taking shelter of the pure devotee, can be purified by proper guidance. According to the different modes of material nature, men are classified in the mode of goodness, brahmanas, and the mode of passion, kshatriyas, and or administrators, the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, vaishyas, or merchants, and the mode of ignorance, sudras, or workers. Those lower than them are called chandalas, or dog eaters, and they are born in sinful families. Generally, the association of those born in sinful families is not accepted by the higher classes. But the process of devotional service is so strong that the pure devotee of the Supreme Lord can enable people of all lower classes to attain the highest perfection of life. This is possible only when one takes shelter of Krishna, as indicated here by the word vyapasritya. One has to take shelter completely of Krishna, then one can become much greater than the great jnanis and yogis. So now when you hear the purport to this verse, it erases any idea of prejudice against any class of people, even the lowest classes. That means that anyone, even the worst person, can become a pure devotee of the Lord in this lifetime. Okay, so then this is further validated in these alternate translations where it says, and this is first canto, 11th chapter, 19th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.32, the Lord says, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, even the low-born chandalas, and those who are born in a family of unbelievers, and even the prostitutes, shall attain perfection of life if they take shelter of unalloyed devotional service to me. Because in the path of devotional service, there are no impediments due to degraded birth and occupation. The path is open for everyone who agrees to follow it. There it is. That's an alternate translation of the same verse, 932. This makes it very clear that Prabhupada is not talking about women, all women as one class. He's talking about a particular class of women that are fallen, and uses the word prostitute. But again, he's making the point that anyone, even the lowest person, can become a pure devotee if they have the association of a pure devotee of the Lord. Now, there is more information about this. Thank God, there's only one thing that is not controlled by the law of karma, and that is surrender to Krishna. Even the worst person in the world, if they surrender to Krishna, they can become purified. The example is Vibhishan. Vibhishan is Ravana's brother. He's a Rakshasa. He has Rakshasa blood. He looks like a Rakshasa. But yet, he became a devotee. He surrendered to the Lord, and the Lord accepted him. And he purified him. And Ravana, although Ravana was a demon, his brother was a devotee, completely dedicated to to Lord Ramachandra. So there are many examples in the Vedas of this extreme mercy that people can experience if they accept the association of devotees and follow their instructions. So this is the real Vedic Dharma. This is not the false so-called Vedic Dharma that the Christians are teaching to, this Hindu boy to convince him that Christianity is much more, let's say, merciful and welcoming and equitable than the very mean Vedic Dharma. You see? So this is the problem. You're going to send your kid to a Christian school. You have to understand this is going to happen. It's necessary. It's part of their whole strategy to destroy Hinduism. Now, are the Mayavadis helping them? Yes, they're helping them. Are the false brahmanas in Kali Yuga that changed the one word of the Shastra helping them? Yes, they're helping them. Right? They're making it easy for them to come up with these outrageous statements that the Vedas do not support human worth and human value, and the Vedas don't accept the non-aggression principle, and therefore they promote murder, and rape, and theft, and all these things. So you see how egregious this argument becomes the more you look into it, and you see how the false brahmanas are helping the Christians destroy Vedic Dharma, and the Mayavadis are helping them destroy Vedic Dharma with their false narrative of that, as they say, that the spiritual world is, let's see, what is it? Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. So, now, there's more to this. Now we're going to discuss how Christianity has deviated from the Vedic knowledge of God. Originally, in ancient Greece, there was Pythagoras, and then there was Socrates, and then there was Plato. They all believed that there is some kind of soul that's eternal. They didn't get it completely right, but well, Pythagoras did, but Socrates and Plato got it half right. But they believed that there is some kind of eternal soul. But they made a few other major mistakes. But anyway, at least they believed that there was a soul. Now, when we look into the history of Christianity, we see that the Christians, after the disappearance of Jesus, in order to understand who Jesus was, they referred to Greek philosophy. If they had referred to the Vedic philosophy, they would probably become all devotees today. But they referred to Greek philosophy, and they began with Aristotle. Aristotle said that there are actually two souls. One is immortal and one is not immortal. So this doctrine of two souls, one is immortal, one is not immortal, was accepted by Augustine. Augustine was a very early Christian philosopher. And he argued that since there are two souls, one is immortal, one is not immortal, and that the non-immortal soul is soul in animals, and the mortal soul, and the the immortal soul is the soul of human beings. Therefore, since animals do not possess an immortal soul, they are meant, dead or alive, for human beings. So then, this became standard Christian doctrine that animals do not have a soul, and it's all right to kill them and eat them. This is because the Christians look to Aristotle, and Aristotle deviated from his guru Plato and Socrates, because at least Plato and Socrates, they said there isn't some kind of immortal soul. So Aristotle says there is two souls. There's one is immortal, one is not immortal. And then you have Augustine that says, okay, the animals are don't have an immortal soul, therefore they're meant for human beings, dead or alive. That means that you can eat them. You can kill them and eat them. So now we come to Aquinas, not Aquinas, I'm sorry, Origen. Origen was another early Christian philosopher. And he said that souls, immortal souls, are created. In other words, they're not completely immortal. They only exist when they're created and they get a body. Now, this is completely wrong, but it became accepted by the Christians. So, and it completely now violates Vedic Dharma. Never was there a time, Arjuna, when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these other kings, nor will there ever be a time where we cease to exist. In other words, that verse, the second chapter, establishes the full eternality of the soul. Before birth in this body, and after death of the body. Here comes Origen, and it says a soul is born at one time. And so that has a huge impact on Christianity. How can a soul be immortal if it is born at a certain time? You see, so it's completely nonsense concept. So the theory of the creation of soul of a human, or of a human soul, at the moment of conception, was further accepted by Aquinas, who was the top philosopher of the Catholic Church. So Aquinas was living around 1200 after Christ, and he's the top philosopher even today of the Catholic Church. So he accepted what Origen said, that the soul is born at a certain time. And if you go to the Sistine Chapel in Rome, and you see the painting that Michelangelo did of God, and God is touching Adam, the first man, and putting life into his material body. So that is the Catholic idea. They accept that the soul is born, and then it can either be immortal, or it can either die or suffer forever in hell. So this really confuses the whole issue of the soul in Christianity. So the theory of the creation of a human soul at the moment of conception was accepted by Aquinas, and thus became official Catholic doctrine. The belief that each individual human soul is created at a point in time, lives his life or her life, and thereafter is saved or damned eternally, excludes the possibility of reincarnation. By denying reincarnation, Augustine and Aquinas broke with the Platonic tradition of eternal soul and made it difficult for subsequent philosophers to understand evil in the world. This has caused serious decline in belief in Christianity because, now you're going to hear why. If there is no transmigration of the soul, where is divine justice? How can we account for for fortune and misfortune? Why is one man pious, knowledgeable, beautiful, or handsome, or opulent, and another man impious, ignorant, deformed, or poor? Why, on the basis of one finite lifetime, is one person eternally saved and another eternally damned? Why is God so arbitrary, so unmerciful? Having rejected the possibilities of transmigration and karma, Western philosophers have been troubled all the way down to modern times because evil exists. They argue either God's power is limited, or he is not all good, or he does not exist at all. See, this has created a big problem for Christianity. And we can see how over time things can deteriorate and change and be completely contrary to the whole beginning of the spirituality. So this can happen in Krishna consciousness too. It's by people changing things, coming up with theories that are not true, and then all of a sudden they get some vote by some people, and they say, well, that's our principle now. See, so now modern deniers of Christianity, like Richard Dawkins, I don't know if you've heard of his name before. He's a prominent atheist and evolutionary biologist. In other words, he's a big nonsense guy, right? He's written extensively on the topic of the existence of God. Here are some of the arguments he has used to debunk the existence of God. Number one, the argument from design. In other words, you see so much organization in the universe, and everything is functioning in an orderly way. And he argues that the universe's complexity and beauty do not necessarily point to the existence of a designer, or meaning God, but rather can be explained by natural processes such as evolution and the laws of physics. That, of course, is complete nonsense. But he makes the case, right? And then he says also, the argument from personal experience of the existence of God, he argues that personal experience of God cannot be taken as evidence for the existence of God because they can be explained in psychological and neurological processes. Again, another nonsense argument, but it makes sense to nonsense people. And then number three, the problem of evil. Dawkins argues that the existence of evil in the world, such as natural disasters and human suffering, is incompatible with the existence of an all-powerful and all-loving God. So, he is a very, let's say, well-published atheist, and he's convinced many people, especially in Europe and in England and the United States, not to believe in the existence of God. Now, why is it? Well, because of what I just explained. You start from Aristotle saying there's two types of souls, one's immortal, one's immortal. And then you have someone that says that, well, that means that, animal souls are not eternal. You can eat them, you can kill them, it's okay. And then someone else comes in, Origen, and says, well, the soul is born at a certain time. So he eliminates the complete immortality of the soul. It only begins to exist when it's born in the body. Now, because of that, the Abrahamic religions, that means Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, or Christianity and Islam, they bury their dead. They think that you must have a body, and you have to be buried, and that body has to be protected. So when there's a second coming of, in Islam it's called the Mahdi, or in Judaism it's called the Messiah, and in Christianity it's called Jesus. The second coming, everyone will be rehabilitated from the dead. They'll come up out of the dead, and there'll be a final judgment. Some people will go to hell, some people will die, and some people will go to heaven. But you have to have the body. So here we see why the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews give special attention to cemeteries, whereas the Hindus, they burn the body, right? Because they know that the soul is different than the body. But in Abrahamic religions, there's some connection between the body and the soul in their philosophy. Okay, so coming back to the Christian narrative, they are painting a picture of the Vedas as one of the most evil things, or the Vedic Dharma was very evil, let's say, philosophy that differentiates different classes of people, and those people get stuck in this lifetime. And then, of course, the Christians believe there's only one lifetime. There's no reincarnation. So that means that there's no mercy. There's no universal ethics and self-worth in the Vedic tradition. Okay, so I wanted to go over this because it's very important to understand what's going on in this world. Every day, people are coming up with more and more speculations and misleading other people, especially youth. And it becomes difficult for someone to grow up and become a devotee because of all this speculation that's being thrown around. Now, unless we are able to explain the speculation and debunk it, we can't just go merrily along ignoring it, because the more you ignore all that speculation, the more it's going to stick to your children or to somebody else, and more people will become atheistic or become antagonistic to Vedic Dharma. Okay, so now I'm going to ask, are there any questions? Because this is a very important, let's say, topic to discuss, because you see how one goes down a slippery slope of what you would call deviation by little steps. One person says there are two souls. One's immortal, one's not immortal. Another person says the soul is born at a certain time, therefore they reject its complete immortality. And then another person says, yeah, but there's no reincarnation, there's no afterlife, there's no karma. When you die, either you go back to Godhead or you go to hell. So all of this creates confusion, and eventually people get very disgusted. Then they give false definitions, just like we see this verse 932. 932 is a very hopeful verse. It means that everybody can become Krishna conscious, regardless of what their position is in the varnas and ashramas and whatever. And by the way, if you follow the varnas, but you follow them correctly, everyone in the varna system, the Sudra, the Vaishya, and the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas, they all become liberated and go back to Godhead by cooperation. That's the real Varnashram system. And then the Ashrama system, if there seems to be any inequality in the Varna system, it's eliminated because you have Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. So, and that's a progressive path for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're born like Jabal or you're born in a Brahmin family. So we have to understand what our philosophy is exactly and not let these outside people define us. We have to define, well, we don't have to define ourselves. It's already been defined by Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas. We have to but we have to learn this philosophy. If we don't learn it, then we can be, let's say, bewildered and get confused and not be able to explain things correctly. So are there any questions?
So, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I have a question. Firstly, I want to just say that, like, when this Messiah or Jesus will come, is there any timeline for these religions?
They always say it's always happening now. It's going to happen very soon. They've been saying that for the last 2,000 years.
Then, second question is, then why did they touch the mummies? Because Egyptians believed that they will mummify the body because the soul will reprocess it. So why, human being will then interrupt mummies?
Okay, now we did not discuss the Egyptian mummification in this class today. We're talking about Christianity and Vedic Dharma.
Egyptians were not Christians?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
So don't mix everything up. We don't want to make a khichdi. We already have enough khichdi. We don't need any more khichdi.
And then because I was just googling, Christianism was first BC and Islam came around 7th BC. So before that it's Sanatan Dharma. So
Is this another misunderstanding? Mayavad philosophy has been around right from the beginning of time. It's not a modern creation. It's been there since the beginning of time. Right? So the Mayavad philosophy is the worst because it rejects everything. So there's that saying, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mitya. This is what the Mayavadis say. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mitya. Now what does that mean? You know what it means? Brahma Satyam Jagat Mitya. What's it mean? The Brahman is impersonal, right? That's the only reality. And the Jagat, the whole is an illusion. Say. So that summarizes Mayavad philosophy. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mitya. They're rejecting all individualities, all living entities. They said there's only one soul that's Brahman, and it's not a person. It's an energy, a light. So this is so wrong. It's unbelievable. But yet, 90% of Brahmanas in India are Mayavadis. 90%. That's a huge number, right? So what do you expect? The Christians love it. This is handing them a golden plate with a knife in it and said, okay, now you can stick that knife in our heart and kill our religion, right? Now the Christians have their own knives they're sticking in their heart also. I went over some of it now. But what the Hindus have done is they're giving the Christians so many ways to debunk the validity of Hindu Dharma. That's why Prabhupada said that we are not Hindus, we are Sanatan Dharmis. And we're not Mayavadis. We are, Bhagavatas. We believe in that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We don't believe that there are many gods. So whenever they teach Hinduism in school, they say, oh, they believe in many gods. But that's not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness believes in one Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's Krishna. And then, just like in Christianity, you have God, and then you have his son, Jesus, and then you have the angels. So here we have Krishna and his expansion, Balaram, and his Vishnu expansions and so forth. And then you have the demigods. You see. So there are different gradations of, let's say, living entities, but there's only one supreme God, and that's Krishna himself. And that's why I explained to this lady the history of Bhrigu Muni, who was deputed by the demigods to specifically find out who was actually the supreme God. Was he Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva? And after doing his research, he says definitely Vishnu or Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all these things were settled way back in history, and people are still arguing about it today. That just shows how ignorant people are in Hinduism. They're not being taught their religion properly. And because of that, it's easy for the Christians to convince people, especially young kids, to reject Hinduism. Okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I know of some Christians who believe in reincarnation. So the fact, or at least whatever you said earlier about Christians not believing in reincarnation, is that only for certain sects of Christianity or everybody?
Talking about the whole Catholic Church, it's millions and millions of people. And then many of the Protestant churches also reject reincarnation.
I think
there are very few Christians that believe in reincarnation. Very, very few.
I can check with my friend what part of Christianity she belongs to, but she believes in reincarnation, but they don't.
Wait a minute. What does she understand by reincarnation?
That the soul, that you're going to take birth. The soul, there is a soul in the body, and it's going to take, after death, it's going to take another body. And she also doesn't believe in animals having a soul. I think this is the common thing that I heard amongst.
Oh, so she doesn't believe animals have a soul.
Yeah, okay. That she does not believe.
Yeah. Well, that's called a hodgepodge, right? One thing she has a little bit right, and one thing she's completely wrong. See, this is the problem. Either you want the whole enchilada, or you want just a piece of the enchilada, right? So we want the whole enchilada. We want Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? We don't want this hodgepodge, half this, half that. Right?
I don't know the answer to that. I can ask, but she does believe in reincarnation. I've heard that from a couple of my Christian friends. That's why I was curious. I know they have a hodgepodge,
you have to ask them what they mean by that.
Okay, Maharaj, I can ask and bring back to this class. Hare Krishna.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Jesus was crucified by Romans, right?
What?
Jesus was crucified by Romans, right?
Okay, so you haven't read the Bible. The Jews complained to the Roman emperor of Jerusalem of the time that Jesus was claiming to be the Son of God, and this was completely wrong. And he was so they convinced the Roman Empire to kill Jesus. I mean, they didn't want to do it but when the Jews presented to them that he's claiming to be the Messiah and like the Son of God, and that he's going to challenge your authority, because they were, Rome was in charge of Palestine at that time. So that would be a direct challenge to their authority. So that's why they took it up and they crucified him.
Later,
They didn't want to do it. But the way the Jews presented it, they became convinced that they should do it.
So Romans were believing in some other religion that?
Yeah, of course, they have a different religion.
And they also got converted to Christianity later.
That was because of convenience. But by converting the emperor of the Roman Empire to Christianity, they had to compromise with him. And that's where meat eating became okay in Christianity. Up until the time that they were being persecuted, most of them were like vegetarians. Jesus himself was like a vegetarian. As soon as they accepted, or they convinced, especially the emperor, the Byzantine emperor, and then the Roman emperor to become Christians or convert to Christianity, then they made some concessions, such as meat eating and other things. That's what happens, when you convert some big guys. You have to sort of let them have their piece of meat.
Maharaj, it is also said that 18 years of Jesus' life is unknown. That time he was in India.
There's a whole book that explains those years. The Aquarian Gospel. It explains he came to India, he went to Jagannath Puri. You can read that. It's called the Aquarian Gospel. Of course, the Christians reject it, but there's a whole book about what he did those years.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Any other questions? Prabhuji has a question.
Maharajji?
Say it in Hindi. Say it in Hindi. I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Just to understand, in reference to time in Christianity, they use some abbreviation of the words. AD, BC.
AD means after
CE.
death, and BC means before Christ. AD means after death of Christ.
And then they also use word era, CE. Some
CE?
Yeah, Christ era or something.
I don't know. What is it?
So what does that signify? Means before Christ means before Christ came in. Simple.
So AD means before his death. I mean after death, and then C means before, while he was still alive. Okay. Yes.
Maharaj, thank you for explaining that the background story for how this philosophy evolved, Christianity philosophy. It helps when somebody challenges, we can articulate this intelligently.
This information is in Dialectical Spiritualism book.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So the Mataji was talking about there's a soul, somebody, they talk about incarnation or reincarnation, this dispute. But then there is a document evidence of people remembering past life experiences. There's proven evidence. How I don't understand how Christianity is reconciling with that. Like where people can remember their past lives. So if there is no reincarnation, then how?
Well, it's just like whatever you say, I'm going to ignore it. So I don't have to worry about justifying anything. I just ignore it. Right? So that's what they do. They just ignore things. They say, well, it doesn't count. No, but they can explain it through neurological and this thing and that thing. Yeah. He's got an answer for everything. There's only one answer he doesn't have: when he's going to die. That answer he doesn't have. But it's sure it's going to happen.
That's all, Maharaj. Thank you.
No, people play this game of just ignore. So if you just ignore, then you don't have to deal with it. That doesn't solve any problem, but for them, they solve the problem. They just ignore it.
The other point they talk about is that Jesus also ate meat, like fish or something.
Prabhupada said, Jesus multiplied 4 fish and 4 breads to feed 4,000 people. He said, if you can do that, you can eat meat too. So, don't try and imitate Jesus. Right? We don't have the same power that he does. So he multiplied 4 fish and 4 pieces of bread to feed 4,000 people on the sermon, during the Sermon on the Mount. So if you don't have, like for example, Lord Shiva drinks the hala poison, holds it in his neck, doesn't die. If you just take 1 drop of the hala poison, you'll die. So don't try and imitate Lord Shiva. Right? He has way more power than we can ever imagine. But still, he's nothing compared to Shiva. Compared to Krishna. When I say nothing, he comes up to 84% of Krishna's qualities. And Narayana has up to 96% of the Lord's qualities. So Krishna is 100%. This was analyzed by Rupa Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we have to accept these things and understand qualitatively who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once we are convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything else falls into place. But that can take time because we have to hear on a regular basis and learn more and more about who Krishna is and what are his special qualities, and glorify him by choice prayers spoken previously, like Prahlad Maharaj's prayers and Dhruva Maharaj's prayers and Indra's prayers and so forth. We have to recite them and glorify the Lord. The more we glorify the Lord, the more closer we come to the Lord. Okay, so yes?
Why did Jesus choose to multiply fish and not some other vegetarian food?
Because that's all there was. That's all that there was. Which religion? Okay, so see, again, it depends which sect of Christianity or Judaism or Islam you accept. But there are several possibilities. One is the soul goes back to God, so it's immortal. Two is the soul actually dies, it doesn't exist anymore. Three is the soul goes to a place called hell, where it suffers eternally. So all three are, let's say, spoken about in the Christian church, depending on which sect of Christianity you follow. Okay.
So when they will resurrect, when they will again become alive, then they will be soulless at that time. Soul will not come back to their body.
I don't understand what you just said.
So when the Messiah will come.
No, these three things are absolute. Either you go back to Godhead, you die, don't exist anymore, or you suffer forever in hell. You can see how nasty Christianity is. Well, it's not nasty if you go back to Godhead, but the other two are nasty. Either you stop existing completely, if that's a violation of Vedic philosophy because the soul's immortal, or you suffer forever in hell, and you only have one lifetime. They said you only have one lifetime. So they rejected reincarnation, and so that makes God look like he's really mean. He's not really nice. You only have one lifetime, and if you make so many mistakes, then there's no way you can rectify it. You suffer forever in hell, or you die, and you don't exist anymore. It's crazy. It's not philosophy. It's a type of gruesome, gross manipulation of human beings, if you think about it. How can you say God is merciful if you can be condemned forever to suffer, or if you stop existing? First of all, we don't accept that. The soul is immortal. But some Christians say they can stop existing. So other Christians say they can be in hell forever. After one lifetime? So why, and then how do you explain someone is born healthy and handsome and wealthy, and another person is poor and they're being always in trouble? How can you say God is merciful?
Maharaj, my understanding is that the Abrahamic religions are all fear-based, like
what?
Fear-based, in the sense people who are in mode of ignorance can only understand religion when there is a fear element to it. So either you go to hell or you go to heaven, depending on how you behave, is infused for people who are in fear-based.
Well, no, they preach like that. They preach that, you go downtown, or sometimes during Nanda Mela, some Christians come with these big signs and say, "You're all going to hell."
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
And they have these microphones like that. They say, "You're all going to hell. All of you are going to hell. You have to accept Jesus, otherwise you're finished."
Right. So the people who are in mode of goodness, they don't accept that binary answer of, through this fear-based religions. That's where they get attracted to the
So Prabhupada tells a
religions.
story. One time, this preacher was preaching in Lancaster County in England, where they have a lot of mines, right? People go down into the mines, and they work. They get coal, the coal mines. So he said, hell is a dark place, and it's dusty, and it doesn't smell good. Well, that's what a coal mine is. So no one got scared when he said that, right? But when he said, and there are no newspapers in hell, and they said, what? No newspapers in hell? No, I don't want to go to hell. Right? Because they were reading newspapers every day. But when he described, you know, the atmosphere in the coal mine, they didn't get disturbed by it, but that's where they go every day to work. So the situation in this world is not very good because there's so much speculation, and you end up with wrong, let's say, guidelines. Like just now, like you saw yesterday. I don't know if you were here. Okay, Prabhu Dhananjay, you want to play that video again of that lady? Okay. So you're going to see this video of what's coming down the pike with Jay Inslee. And it just shows you how there's going to be a gigantic challenge of the authority of parents over their children. Now, should we be aware of what's going on in the society? Yes, we should be aware of it. Like I remember once we went to the Champs-Élysées in Paris to do Sankirtan on I think it was a Friday night. Now we're not reading newspapers, we're not listening to news, nothing like that. It just so happened that night, 1969, 1970, Charles de Gaulle died. So there were like thousands and thousands of people in the Champs-Élysées that night. So we didn't know. So here we come in with our medallions and cartels, and we go out into the Champs-Élysées, and there are all these people there, and we said, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. People were going to kill us because Charles de Gaulle was, you know, the big hero of France, right? And we're out there chanting, jumping up and and they're all lamenting the death of Charles de Gaulle. They were going to kill us, you know. We had to run back into the subway and get away from there, right? Because we weren't aware that you know, Charles de Gaulle died that night, and that everyone was lamenting. You found it? Go ahead and put it on. So yeah, we should have some idea what's happening in the society. So now I'm going to, I showed you yesterday, but we'll look at it again.
Here in Washington State, and I want to direct your attention to it. Please share this video far and wide, because we need to flood Governor Jay Inslee with phone calls and emails, anything that we can do, because he's about to sign into law one of the most disgusting, damaging, demonic bills to ever come into Washington State. The bill is called 5599, and right now it is waiting for the signature of Governor Jay Inslee. This bill would allow kids as young as 13 years old. I'm just going to read this so I don't mess it up. It's going to allow kids as young as 13 years old to leave their homes and be placed in a government facility where they can have gender-altering drugs and surgeries. If you guys are not paying attention to the wicked, evil agenda of the transgender movement, they are targeting our children, and Washington State is becoming ground zero for this wickedness. And so kids as young as 13 leave their homes, placed in a government facility where they can get gender-altering drugs and surgeries without any parental consent. If parents don't comply to changes, they can legally, to these changes, to gender changes, they can legally lose custody of their children. Are you guys hearing what I'm saying? So here in Washington State, if your little boy comes to you and he says, hey mom, I was just at school today, and for the last 2 years they've been telling me that I might be a girl, and I finally believe it, and so now I am a girl, and I want to have gender-altering drugs and gender-altering surgeries, and the parents say, no, Tommy, you're not a girl, you're a boy, the state of Washington then can take your child legally, from you and assist that child in whatever they want. Yeah, can a kid at 18 years of age and younger in Washington State get a cigarette? Nope, that's not good for you. Can you join the military without your parents' consent when you're a minor? Nope, can't do that. Can you drive without your parents' consent? Can you drive without a driver's license before the age of 16? Nope, but 13 years old in Washington State, and you want to get top surgery and bottom surgery and have altering drugs going to change you for the rest of your life, No problem. No problem, because the demons in Washington State are cheering right now. You guys can help us out. All of this, by the way, paid for by taxpayers. And so this should outrage parents. It should outrage us. Here's a number for you guys to call. Write this down. 36.
So you see what's going to happen this next week. Jay Inslee also announced that he's going to retire. He's not going to go for election again. So in other words, what he's doing is he wants to, he failed trying to become, president of the United States. So he's trying to do something that will be remembered in history. So he's making Washington the first state in which if a parent refuses the child to change their sexuality, they can seize the child, take it away from the parent, and at 13 years old, change the sexuality of the child, and then keep it away from the parents, keep the child away from the parents, legally. See, now, what's happening in other states right now is teachers are convincing kids to change their sexuality, and they secretly do it without the parents' permission. So parents are suing those teachers in those schools that do that. It's happening in North Carolina and other states. What Jay Inslee is doing is he got the two houses of the state government, the Senate and the House of Representatives, to vote to make this law of, when a child is 13 years old, if they want to change their sex and parents refuse, they can take the child away from the parents for the rest of their life and change their sex. And they become the ward of the state in a sense. So he wants to be famous to be the first state to do that legally. And because it becomes law, you can't challenge it because they make it a law. Whereas now it's being challenged in other states where it's not law. So he's making it a law, and he's the first one. This is crazy. See? Yeah. Your Indian representative in the House of Senate or something. Yeah, I mean, they just go along with whatever, whatever crazy ideas come up. Okay, anyway, just to let you know what's happening around you right now. Yeah. So I'm not telling you to call James. I did call him, and I told him, look, why are you doing this? I said, why don't you just wait till the kid is 18 years old and let him choose on his own? Why you're trying to force it when they're 13 years old and they're very, very confused about who they are? Because at 13, the child's puberty begins, and all the desires that were unfulfilled in their previous life are revealed in their mind, and it confuses the child, especially young girls. And they don't, they have to deal with, their menses and this thing and that thing. And then all these desires from their previous life become awakened in their mind, in the boys and the girls. And then they become attracted to sexuality and things like that. So it's a very confusing age, 13. And now they're going to make it a law so they can take your child away from you and operate on them and change their sex without your permission. Haribo. How would you feel if your daughter or son did that?
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. Yeah, it's horrible. Okay, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
sing. Yeah.
So what's going to happen is, I'm going to predict what I think is going to happen. If they pass the law, then a lot of people are going to pull their kids out of public schools. That's why we should get more serious about opening a major school and help parents protect their kids by not being indoctrinated by this nonsense. Because the public school teachers now, they're going to be very, very adamant at helping kids change their sex legally, without the parents' permission. Okay, who wants to sing? No, let one of the ladies sing.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mohi Savadhana Mate
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Vai Eba Vatoriya Jai
Janara
Prasade Vai Eba Vatoriya Jai Krishna Prabhi Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prabhu
Krishna Prabhi Hoi Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prabhu
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Pure
Jai Prasade Ganesha
Ye prasade pure
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदिकाय जहाँ रचरित वेदिकाय जहाँ रचरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु लोकेना लोकेरा जीवाना हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पाद छाया हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पाद छाया एवे जा सुशुक्ति भुवाना प्रभुपाद पतित पवना जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद शिल प्रभुपाद नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्यत्यादिशतारिणे Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitya Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitya Gaura Hari Bo.
Elevator Bhakta Vinay ki jai. Nitai Gaur